When it comes to water management programs, efficiency and compliance are everything. LAMPS by HC Info is the award-winning all-in-one cloud platform trusted by facilities teams, water treatment professionals, and health departments nationwide. With LAMPS, you get a comprehensive water management plan system with tools to be successful like IoT sensor data analytics and direct lab automation. And it's all in a single easy-to-use application. Save time and money meeting ASHRAE 188, ST 108, CMS, Joint Commission, and state requirements. Plus, LAMPS offers the industry's fastest path to ASSE 12080 Legionella certification. Ready to take the next step in your water management compliance and certification? Visit scalinguph2o.com/LAMPS to request a demo from a LAMPS expert today. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/LAMPS. LAMPS by HC Info. Making your water management program defensible, sustainable, and smart. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, and I'm excited to talk about optimizing your tank levels with Aquaphoenix Scientific's Tank Scan. This innovative technology keeps an eye on tank levels in real time, reducing downtime and optimizing supply management. What if you had complete visibility over your tank levels, ensuring you never run low or overstock? With Tank Scan, you can. Streamline your operations and save resources by achieving low waste, lower cost, and a more efficient supply chain. Aquaphoenix Scientific's focus on connecting water treatment with technology means they're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. By integrating Tank Scan into your operations, you're not just improving your tank management, you're enhancing your entire water treatment ecosystem. Ready to take your water management to the next level? Head over to scalinguph2o.com/APS. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/APS. Aquaphoenix Scientific, your one-stop solution for smart water and chemical management. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, last week, you heard me do something extremely challenging. Whenever I have to read someone else's speech, it is much more difficult for me to do that than it is to write my own speech. And last week, I read for you Patrick Henry's famous speech that he gave in Richmond, Virginia, 250 years ago, "Give me liberty or give me death." And many of us have heard those words before, but last week, and I heard this from so many people in the Scaling Up Nation, that was the first time you've heard that speech in its entirety. And I appreciate you guys getting back to me. Let me know that you enjoyed that. And I am honored to be able to bring things like that to you. And also, weeks before, put myself on the spot and tell you I'm going to do things like that because that locks me in to make sure that I'm going to do the hard things. And maybe you've got a goal out there that you want to do, and you just can't get around to working on it, to getting it done. Well, the best thing to do is to set a date for it. The second best thing to do is to tell people what that date is and ask them to hold you accountable. There is just something that happens when you get a goal out of your head and you share that with somebody. Just the fact you shared with it, you know that they know that you are going to do that or you're supposed to do that. And even without them saying anything, you're going to work a little bit differently on that. It's just how our brains work. We don't like to disappoint other people. And we also, whether you realize it or not, actually probably thrive with accountability. Now, that's why accountability is one of the main tenets in the Rising Tide Mastermind. And we do that not to pressure people to get things done, but to give them an extra tool to get things done. And Nation, over the years that we've been doing the Rising Tide Mastermind, it is amazing all of the accomplishments that people have made within that group. Now, granted, some of those accomplishments probably would have happened anyway, but I'm willing to bet because they went through the methodology of what I just described in the group, they told the rest of the group what they were working on. They even got feedback on how they were working on it with the group, got more done. In most cases, they got it done quicker than they would have if they just worked on it on their own. So I know you probably have that tough goal out there that you are trying to work on. Maybe you want to get your certified water technologist designation. Folks, that is a difficult challenge. That is something that you've really got to work at. And a lot of people will get their CWT because they just took the advice that I gave. They set a date. If you take any of my CWT prep courses, the first advice that I give you is to go ahead and set the date for the exam, and then you work backwards after you tell somebody about it. So Nation, whatever the goal is, I hope it's that you're going to get your CWT or whatever type of certification in the water treatment world that you work in, because I think that's so valuable when we get credentials like that. I think it raises the entire industrial water treatment bar. It also changes your confidence about anything that you're doing in that field because you know that you have that certification. It does so many things for you. So, Nation, all of that to say, I hope last week inspired you to maybe learn a little bit about history that maybe you didn't know about and celebrate history. So many people are trying to ignore history or just, yeah, I guess just that's it, just ignore history. I truly believe that if we don't acknowledge what's happened in history, even if it was horrible, we need to acknowledge those things so we can learn from those things so they don't happen again. And if anything like that ever starts to happen again, we remember our past so we have a roadmap to do better this next time. All right, I've said all of that. Now we are going to move on. And of course, one of the things that I know everybody looks forward to are what are the events that are coming up in perhaps my area, but definitely in the near future. And we've talked about this one a couple of times. This is a fun one. This is Water Jam 2025 taking place in Virginia Beach, Virginia, September 8th through 11th. And this is a joint annual meeting of the Virginia section of the American Waterworks Association and the Virginia Water Environment Association. Now, they have a whole bunch of interactive things going on in this conference, so you might want to check it out. We, of course, are going to have a very easy way for you to do that, and that's by going to scalinguph2o.com, going over to our events page. And while you're there, go ahead and check out Water Infrastructure. They're having their conference September 14th through 17th in sunny Orlando, Florida. This is hosted by the American Waterworks Association, and it's all about finding solutions around water infrastructure. We're going to have that information for you, of course. And in addition to that, the Water Pro Conference 2025 is taking place in New Orleans, Louisiana, September 15th through 17th. We'll have all the information you need to know on our events page. And then one I want to make sure you have on your calendar is the Association of Water Technologies annual conference and expo taking place in Colorado Springs, Colorado, November 12th through 15th at the Broadmoor. Folks, I will be there. Many people in the Scaling Up Nation are going to be speaking this year. And of course, this is the premier event for the Scaling Up H2O podcast because so many Scaling Up Nation members are there. It is a sea of Scaling Up H2O buttons as we look out in the audience. And it's so cool. People will collect buttons. we have so many buttons to give to you. So please make sure you find me at that conference or somebody from my team. We will be happy to give you a button. You can put that with your collection. We proudly wear those around our lanyards, and that creates an easy opportunity for you to network because you see somebody else with that button, and that is such an easy conversation for you to say, I also listen to the podcast, and then you guys can just break the ice over the podcast. Hey, what did you think about episode 273? By the way, I have no idea what episode 273 was. That just popped in my head. And then you guys can start talking about that. And maybe that's now your new contact that can answer questions that you aren't able to answer. Maybe that's that person that when you're driving between account to account, you are able to talk to and say, hey, I just saw this thing. I'm not really sure what to do with that. Have you ever come across that? Or maybe it's the person that you just call in between account to account when that customer just wasn't making sense and you're trying to help them, but you don't know what the next step is. And this is somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. Nation, this job is so much more fun when we do it with our peers. And I will tell you, I have the most amazing relationships within the industrial water treatment industry. Many I talk with on a multiple day per week basis, and I cannot imagine my regular day to day without these people. And I would not have known them if I did not go to a conference like we mentioned here. And I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult to break the ice on the first time. I know it's hard to, what am I going to say to this person? I don't want to feel silly or them to think that I'm silly by talking with them. And I know some people that comes very naturally. So I'm just telling you that those scaling up buttons is your key to maybe finding that person that I'm talking about. It's definitely a key to you networking. And that is one of the biggest things that you can do at any of the events that we are talking about. And Nation, it was at an Association of Water Technologies conference that I met our friend, James McDonald. And of course, James McDonald is back this week with a brand new installment of What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what do we call the ratio between the amount of dissolved solids in a system water and the amount of dissolved solids in that system's makeup water? The answer is cycles of concentration. You get extra brownie points if you said concentration ratio, which is Trace's preferred phrase. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Well, thank you, James. And Nation, many of you are letting us know that you are having discussions with your team by using the discussion guides that we are providing on each and every episode starting in 2025. So if you are trying to have a conversation with your team and you don't know how to start that, we've got a free, easy way for you to start that. You can download that discussion guide by going to scalinguph2o.com. Whatever episode you want to go to, providing it's been in this year. We're going to go back and probably do a few for earlier episodes, but right now we're just working on the present episodes of this year. You can then download that discussion guide, and what an easy way for you to talk with your team. So many of you in the Scaling Up Nation have said how much you've enjoyed those and thanked the team here at the Scaling Up H2O podcast for providing those. Well, Nation, the only reason that I knew to do that the team knew to do that, was you in the Scaling Up Nation are letting us know how you are consuming the content on this podcast and what are some tools that could make your life easier. So if you've got any ideas around that, please let us know by going to scalinguph2o.com, going over to our ideas page, and just let us know anything that you are thinking of. So many are letting us know of potential guests that we can interview. And Nation, speaking of guests, here is our next interview. My lab partner today is Dr. Jasbir Gill of Water Energy Solutions. Dr. Gill, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am very excited about our conversation today. We are going to teach everybody in the Scaling Up Nation everything they wanted to know about scaling, but maybe didn't know how to ask. But before we get there, do you mind introducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Sure, certainly. My name is Jasbir Gill, and I was born in India, and I got my 2 degrees, Masters of Science and PhD in Physical, Inorganic, and Nuclear Chemistry from IIT Roorkee. These are one of these premier schools in India. Then I went to as a postdoctor right after I defended my thesis to Italy. One of the examiners for my thesis was Professor Alberti, who was the director of nuclear energy for the Europe. So these materials which I was preparing was going to be used in the nuclear fission separation, ion exchange material, inorganic ion exchange materials. And so I was actually destined to go to the nuclear industry. So there I went to about a year and a half in there. Then I went to England. England's Atomic Energy in Harwell, they invited me because one of the materials that I made was using but having a difficulty. So they invited me for 6 months, and then I went there for 6 months, and I met a professor from Ohio State University there, Alberti, and I was a consultant to a company, and he was a consultant. So he said, "That young man, have you thought about going to America?" I said, "No, I am going to go back to India because I have a appointment already set for me in the agriculture university." And so he said, "Well, if you change your mind, I'm going to send you a visa there." So he sent me that, but meanwhile he went to Texas A&M. So he parked me in the State University of New York, Buffalo. So there was one of his colleagues who worked in actually the water chemistry, speciations and all that kind of stuff. So the things changed, from the nuclear physics, nuclear chemistry to water chemistry, right? So I spent about 2 years and then was picked up by CalGuard Corporation in Pittsburgh in 1979. And I moved here in 1977. So 1979, I started working for them on a very, very exciting project, which we can talk maybe at some point. It was the predictive tool for the water treatment, CalGuard. And I got a award for IR 100 in 1980. That was just 1 year out of school. And here I'm getting a IR 100 award. So I was all excited, pumped up. I said, "This is it." Right? So then after I spent there until 2000 when Calgon was bought by the Suez, the French company, and then they bought the Nalco also here in Chicago. And the Nalco, just point blank, they told me they're not going to let me go anywhere. So you can work from Pittsburgh if you love Pittsburgh, or better you can come to Naperville. So I came to Naperville and joined in 2000, February of 2000 at Nalco. There I retired during the COVID time just because my father-in-law was sick. So we have to take care of him. He was in California. So that's a long story, but in a short few words, summarize that. And during that process, I was very, 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 very lucky and got some good mentors there that allowed me to publish a lot of work. I have published about 150 papers in the industrial universities as well as the industry. And to my credit, I am an inventor or co-inventor of about 70 patents. So it was a very fruitful for me.
So you are now working for your own company, Water Energy Solutions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Exactly. I'm a player, my player. When I retired from there, and because for 45 years I haven't done anything but going to office, working in the lab with the co-workers and all that kind of stuff, traveling a lot. So I was not very friendly with my family. So they told me to go find a job. Then I started my company, incorporated the business, Water Energy Solutions. The reason for that was, Mr. Blackmore, it was that, when I was at Nelco, our motto was save the water. We had a lot of programs which is save the water, but nobody gave anything to what it costs to save the water, right? Because there's an energy consumption there, whether you are doing evaporation or you're doing a membranes or some other technologies. So I said there has to be some sort of a sweet point, because to produce that energy, whether it's any energy, your geothermal or anything, electricity, coal fire, whatever, you consume a lot of water there. Have anybody done any calculations that how much per megawatt your water is used, and how many megawatts are used to save, say, 1,000 gallons of water, right? So I said that, well, I'm going to do that. So I started Water Energy Solutions, where to finding for solutions for my clients where it is appropriate to save water, right? And at the lowest cost. So we started looking at technologies that will use. One of the projects when I was at Ecolab, Nalco, I have a from Department of Energy. I applied for a grant. They gave me a $1 million in collaboration with the Argonne National Lab, because that's also in Chicago. So we started a joint project, and that was exactly to develop some technologies to or recycle the water. So based on then I started doing some, how many cycles are there you need to do, and rest of that is, you have no return on your investment. And then not only to that, Mr. Blackmore, in the nuclear power industry, I started calculating in order for them, they were saving water by controlling the pH. And I said that this is a nuclear power industry, and Exelon is a based in Chicago, and we used to do a lot of business with them, and they had no idea that they were producing so much of the greenhouse gases from the nuclear power plant. How? Because the Rock River has about 250 parts per million of the alkalinity. In order to get them at least 3 cycles of the concentration in the cooling tower, they had to use 32 trucks of sulfuric acid per week. So I calculated the amount of the acid, just based on the acid, what they were using. And it turns out that for 1 pound of acid you use, you produce 0.88 pound of CO2 by knocking out the alkalinity. So then when I calculated amount of the carbon dioxide they were producing, greenhouse gases, they were amazed at that. No, we're not. I said, yeah, you are doing a lot of that. So then Nelco commissioned that to me. They said that, well, all the powers or plants which you see, which we have, at least for them, see how much the greenhouses gases they produce, even the nuclear power plant, because we have a very good idea about the nuclear fleet. Most of 80-90% of those, we were treating their water. So that's when that whole thing came to me, making some sort of a calculations and estimating what is the relationship is between water saving, energy consumption, and greenhouse production. That's how I did that. And I'm still doing that.
That's fascinating. And please call me Trace.
Great. Okay. All right.
Well, you mentioned that you were primarily responsible for the CalGuard. Some of the younger people in the audience may not know what that is. Do you mind explaining that technology and how you developed it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In 1979, I joined Calgon, and I was coming from, there's a professor's, Sunny Buffalo, State University of New York, Buffalo, Professor George Nankulas. He's very well known in scale and precipitation, even in the NIH for bone and teeth, because these are all minerals, basically calcium phosphate, hydroxyapatite, which you get in a lot of the industrial systems also. So he actually taught me a lot of the speciation. He told me, he said that, in order to understand really the precipitation or the scale formation, you need to act as a sodium ions in the water, in that beaker, and see how calcium and carbonate or phosphate or sulfate are moving around there in that. So literally, I started about imagining and thinking about that, because there's a process in the when you have ions in the solution, they are randomly running around, and then statistically they will collide with each other, and sometimes the cations and the anions will form. That's how the formation of the scale is. So I was very well versed with the speciation of the ions in water and how they react, how they happen. So Calgon actually was in the they have one of the marketers there. He has an idea that why do we have to do each time we get a new account, or they want to change something there, we need to run to the laboratory to run the test for their conditions and for their water. So he told me, he said that, since you are going to lead up this group of the science here in our, because there was only two PhDs in that place that they hired. And so they were very proud of that at Calgon. So I said that, yeah, we can do that. We can actually make a generic model based on the thermodynamics. And this model, CalGuard, is a model based on thermodynamics, as well as the second part we did was based on the field studies and the laboratory studies. So, in the thermodynamic models, I was very well versed on that, because all I have to do is write a logic that, okay, here is what happens. You have a different conditions which people are operating their plants, which we don't have. A water treatment has no control over that. The temperature, their metallurgies, their operating conditions, basically. You can modify very little. If they have a pH, that's all you can do. So I said that that's there. And then I asked for the survey of the whole our country. I said that, well, let's see if we can break this into the 5 or 6 regions in the whole US. And we had accounts from all the way California to Maine. So we looked at the water chemistry. So I then developed a matrix of that where this water chemistry is there. Some of our Southwest has the silica. That was a special band all the way from Kansas to all the way to New Mexico and Texas and all that kind of stuff. The other ones did not have that much silica. But based on that, then I made a experimental design to look into that. Hey, I am going to see if I can put this experimental design based on what's my lowest level of calcium is, what's my highest level of calcium is, what's my magnesium is low, and then what's the pHs are, what is the temperatures are. So those become all independent variables. Then I was very, very fortunate to have a very dedicated group of experimentalists. They were not tired at all. Trace, they will be every day doing the same experiment, that I will make the experimental design, make this much calcium, and randomize all those things. I said that they have to do the bottle tests, basically 24 hours. I wrote those bottle tests. So they will do it. They'll bring the data to me, and then I will do the regression coefficient on that, and then make a equation, predictive equation. Now, this is the part of the lab and the field. What happens field, I will explain to you in a minute. So the first part, we got the thermodynamics, where I wrote the logic. And at that time, it was no PCs and anything available that we can program ourselves. We used to use a GE's supercomputer in New Jersey. And so we will hook up, we will all day, my couple scientists will be working on developing the codes and all that kind of writing into the language. Then at the end of the day, we will hook up with the telephone line there. And in the morning, we will get our results, whatever errors came in and all that kind of. I'm myself. I did in IIT Roorkee when we were punching cards. So here at least we have a fake terminal, which we could program it and then do it. So we made that program, and then at the end we have the second part. We attached that. So from this program, we will calculate the saturation indices, the real conditions. So let's say your power plant is in San Francisco or LA. So they have a water chemistry. So we will add that water chemistry to that program, and it will calculate saturation indices. Also calculate free calcium, free all that kind of stuff goes in there. And then my equations, which we developed from the laboratory data by the people who generated that data, and I developed those equations in terms of that for different inhibitors. Let's say inhibitor A, polyacrylic acid, the dose rate is equal to a function of some function of calcium, some function of pH, some function of temperature, some function of the saturation indices. And those functions can be linear or non-linear algorithms or whatever that was, right? Logarithms. So we will then plug in that number. So once we have the saturation indices and we have the water analysis, just the water analysis from the plant, so we'll plug in there and voila, it will come the product dose, recommended product dose. So for 2 years, I traveled to a lot of power plants with the sales teams, and I said that, you use, please. They were using like 20% higher than whatever they was. I said that I want you to use the dose which I am predicting here and tell me whether this is the right dose or not the dose. They were very reluctant to do that because A, they did not want to jeopardize, because at that place they were calling that the PhDs are prima donnas and they just think too much. They don't have any practical aspect of that. So then I did some experiments in Texas Utilities plant there. They were very kind. They put two in a bundle, the heat exchanger tubes. They put the extenders on that. So they were actually in the real bundle, those tubes. I said, okay, you can treat your system as you use, but for these two tubes, I'm going to use my own treatment here, right? So then I put a lot of the thermistors on there to monitor right away my heat exchangers and all that kind of stuff. So it came down to that if I deviated from that predicted dose 10% lower, I will get precipitation there. I will see the thermal loss there, right? But that became in the 1980 from onward, 1980, this was deemed as a IR 100, which is the 100 inventions of that year, as the most practical, useful inventions. So that's the first time I went to Chicago Science and Engineering Museum with a black tie and the bow tie. I never worn in my life, right? And got an award for that, along with my higher brass, the president and vice president and all that kind of stuff. So I got to meet with them. And that was actually so much good for my career that unbelievable. It just took off.
Well, Dr. Gill, one of the things I get the honor of doing is teaching math to water treatment professionals with the Association of Water Technologies.
Okay.
And one of the things I try to do when I teach a class is instead of saying, hey, this is a constant, I tell them where that's derived from so they can understand the equations.
Yes.
And I think I've done a pretty good job with pretty much all of the constants that we use out there, except for one. So I'm going to ask you if you know where it comes from. So specifically, when we're talking about saturation pH for calcium carbonate, And then we go into the Langelier Stability Index, the Risner Stability Index. Okay, all of those make sense. But then we get Paul Picorius that created either the Picorius or the Practical Scaling Index. And his formula is 2 times the saturation pH. And then you subtract the pH of equilibrium. And here's where I have the question. So the pH of equilibrium is 1.465 times the log of the M alkalinity, and then you add to that 4.54. Now, I've spoken with a couple of people that knew Paul, and I didn't have this podcast out when Paul was still with us, so I wasn't able to ask him. But I was told that 4.54 was just to get the scale back up to the RSI scale so it had a good comparator. So I'm able to accept that. I'll ask you if you think that's true. But where I cannot find any information is where that 1.465 times the log of the M alkalinity comes from. Can you help me with that?
I don't know much about these indices because this was our effort was to not use these indices because you can use only for calcium carbonate. I wanted to use simultaneously for calcium carbonate, calcium sulfate, and calcium phosphate. In these models, which are the thermodynamic models, if you have a calcium is actually like the example I gave you, like if I was a sodium in that water sitting there and watching what calcium is actually eyeing calcium carbonate, carbonate, alkalinity, sulfate, phosphate, fulleриdes, every anion. It's eyeing for that, right? Simultaneously. It's not one after another. So most of these, the factors which come in, which I developed also some of these factors from my regression questions, it was to fit into the equation. Most of these, which you have these constants, the so-called the constants comes in, it is, in my case at least, I know for sure, I wanted to fit in the equation, right, based on the data, that it's a correlationship coefficient is at least 97, 98% or so. Beyond that, I really don't know where that comes from.
Scaling Up Nation, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, and I've got a special water treatment solution that can streamline your water treatment operations. I'm talking about Commonwealth Chemical Specialties. These folks aren't just another distributor, they're your partners in industrial water treatment success. Since 2014, they've been providing top-notch products across North America. We're talking biocides, scale inhibitors, corrosion inhibitors, biofilm control, membrane anti-scalants and cleaners, virtually everything for your water treatment needs. You name it, they've got it. And get this, they've got nationwide warehousing for quick delivery. No more waiting around when you need those critical products. But here's what really sets them apart. Their technical team, led by Lisa Corbett DiMartino, a chemist with over 35 years of experience, will work with you to find the best solution for your needs. They even offer technical training seminars to keep you and your team at the top of your game. When you're looking to source your industrial water treatment products or need expert advice, discover why Commonwealth Chemical Specialties is more than just a distributor. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth to find out more. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth. Commonwealth Chemical Specialties, more than a distributor, discover the difference. A special thank you to all of our sponsors for their support. Now, let's get back to our interview. I also wanted to ask, because, by the way, my father was a CalGuard guy. That's where he got involved in water treatment. So he was Ray Blackmore. I don't know if you ever ran across him when you were with CalGuard.
I joined in 1979. If it was before that, then I will not know it.
I'm pretty sure it was the early 80s, but I was young, so I don't remember exactly.
What was his function?
He was in the field.
In the field. So field people I knew only. There's always, we get some field people who are very technically stewed, or they want to be on the front ends of and they were the people who will welcome guy like me, that, okay, because it's a time of their investment, time investment to teach me something. Because honestly, as much as I learned from my own laboratories or my professors, I learned more from the field people. Even the life lessons I learned. I went from here one time to Utah for a mining. I developed some mining product. And so you can see that, it took me, we went to Montana and then Utah, and then we were going to Soda Spring. And there we were very excited as a young chemist, scientist. I was very excited that I have found something which is very exciting. They used to make a sulfuric acid from the phosphoric acid, sorry, using the phosphate rock because there's a lot of mining there, phosphate mining. And so filtration was their bottleneck. I solved that, actually. I developed a product which will facilitate filtration, increase the flow, right? So there I went there. We went to the plant manager. We said that, hey, salesperson has already talked about me there. And they said, oh, he's a very excited salesperson. He said, Dr. Gill is coming from our headquarters. And so he's going to, make your life very, very easy. And sales manager, they said that, well, we don't have time this afternoon because there's something not working in their plant. So I was disappointed. I said that, Bart, am I done here? This is very, very sad. He said that, no, they closed one door. I'm going to open another door.
Sounds like a salesperson.
Salesperson, right? A guy in a White House building here does not understand that because we don't accept that kind of a. And then we took a couple people to the lunch there, salesperson, and we came back and they said that, well, Dr. Gill, you have all afternoon teach us all that. And at the end of the day, they said that, but order 2 totes for this.
There you go. There you go. I love it.
Those things which I have learned from those people. Then we changed our algorithms also, these algorithms which I told you in the CalGuard, based on how they were behaving in the field. And majority of those, I was so surprised that majority of those algorithms which we made were so right on the button.
That's pretty impressive.
And then these functions, I tell you, these numbers which you say, I was asked here, I said that they said that, well, we don't have a time that much to develop that data. Jasbir, we have new inhibitors there. And can you develop some models for us? You know what did I do? I asked them to give me at least 10 experiments comparing under different conditions the known inhibitor to the unknown inhibitor. Based on that, I developed a small algorithm, right? And they became J factors, Jasbir factors. So I plugged in there in that program. Computer will actually calculate from the old product and translate into the new product using the J factor.
Now, I've heard of J factors before. That's your first name? That's where that comes from?
Right, right.
How about that?
And then these guys told me a couple of years later, they said that, Jasbir, those J factors are so right on the button. I said that. I thought so too.
This is fascinating. Okay, I have to ask you because you were probably responsible for a lot of this. So during the 70s and the 80s is where we were switching from chromate chemistry to phosphate chemistry. Can you tell us, okay, once the rulings came down and we can't use chromates anymore, that worked so well, what were you guys doing in the laboratory? How did you get that switched out, and why did you choose to go with phosphates?
Trace, this is a wonderful question because this is where the second my hurrah was there, meaning that that's another jack was put under my feet there to go into the elevation, right? That was, if you remember back then, Betts came up with the Dianodic 2 program first, use of the phosphate. And they used a polymer called the Natral 42 from National Starch. And I was still did not know the American culture. And my salespeople, Within 6 months, they were telling me, they said, Jasbir, do something. Bets is eating our lunch. I said that. I did not know what that means, eating our lunch. I took literally that eating of lunch. So, so I said that, okay. So I said that what we need a phosphate program, but we need a polymer. We don't have the polymer, right? So one of our vice president of the R&D, he was very fond of me. He was a Harvard graduate. And no, the IIT which I graduated was no less than Harvard also. Let me remind you that. So he will come after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, when he was done with his work. He will come into my office, and he was from Colorado, a cowboy. He will put his shoes on my desk. He will start. He said, "Do you know that you have to find a polymer which has a very high charge density? But with the high charge density, there's a penalty comes because those polymers are very incompatible with calcium because they will form polysalts with calcium. So think about it. Can you keep them in solution?" And then I talked with my synthesis team. I said, guys, I need something here. Explain me. How can we do this thing? And he said that, well, we can look at the electron donor compounds and all that kind of stuff, and which will not form a precipitate, but might find a chelation there. Right? So then I said that, okay, we looked at the sulfonated molecules. Now, within 6 months, when they told me that Bets is eating lunch, I was again lucky, very lucky, to get that AAMPS copolymer 6040. It was invented in my lab, in my hands, which is now a standard everywhere for phosphate. And I tell you 6040 how it came about also because I presented the data to the president and the high brass there in chairman's office there. And I presented that data, and he said that, listen, our president said that, listen, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a PhD. Tell me, what should we make? And I looked at my bosses, and then I said, 6040 AAMs copolymer, we are going to make it. He says 6040 copolymer, we are going to make it. And everything went around that. And then we had a very clever marketing guy. You might know him. I forgot his name. He went to work for GE, and then he went work for that Kurita in Minnesota. But anyway, within 1 year of eating the lunch to having a batch of the product going for field trials. And at that time, on my request, we made the moving mobile laboratories. On a truck, we mounted exchangers with the 12 tubes, a heat exchanger bundle, and all that kind of stuff. So we could hook to the customer. We would not change their problem, change their process, or interfere in their thing. So they will have that the mobile lab, and we will hook it. We will have one scientist from our technician from our lab. He will monitor that, and we will get data like that. So within 3 months, we have all the data which we needed, and the marketing went into production. And so AAMs was our answer to that chromate, because now we can very happily as 15, 16, 20 parts of phosphate there, whatever we want. And we can go to pH of 7.2, right? Or we can have a 3 or 4 ppm of phosphate, and we can go to the pH of 8.5, 8.7, 8.9, something like that, right? So that was the product line. If you have heard the product line, FreeGuard, PHREEGUARD. The reason was that FreeGuard, that we will be, because in that situation, after 6 months of introducing that, we found out that no, we are limiting the cycles of concentration from the carbonate, not from the phosphate there. We just basically licked the problem of the phosphate. And then you may have heard the molecule PAPM, PAPEMP, polyaminopolyethermethylene phosphonate. That was also came through these hands.
How about that?
Right? And that was to 300 times the calcite saturation. Now, when we combined the formulation, that was called freedom, that product. Now we have a complete freedom from the pH. That's how the history of these products goes there.
This is fascinating.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It was fascinating. I was always on the cloud nine, because it was so beautiful. The people accepted me and my turban everywhere, and they were thrilled to have me.
Well, the times we've run into each other at IWC or AWT, I've always enjoyed talking with you. I've always enjoyed listening to your papers, by which we didn't talk about at all on today's episode. We've been talking about other things.
Do that.
So I do want to have you back so we can talk about at least one of your papers.
Sure.
But before that, do you mind maybe answering some lightning round questions for me?
Lightning round questions. I think, yes, we can do that.
All right. So I'm going to ask question number 1. If you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a chemist in the water treatment industry, what advice would you give yourself?
I will, Trace, give that be a team player. I was not a team player at that time because I thought I can do it myself. I don't need because and then respect others' opinions and their speed of work, because I was so impatient that I could not accept anybody telling me I can't do it this week. Now I have that. That was a really different people work at a different pace and they have a different mindset and all that kind of stuff, right? The third thing, which I later on years, I wish I had known, it did not hurt me actually, that it helped me actually, that focus on your project. Because in these industrial settings, there's always organizations changing, the budget's changing, and all that kind of stuff changing, right? And don't pay attention to that. Just focus on your work, and your work will carry you through every organization there is.
Great answer. What are the last few books that you've read?
Last book, 3 books I read. One was this book here. I actually have the book. It's called The Sapiens. It's a brief history of humankind, right? And I learned a lot of things, Trace, from this book. It goes back to almost like a. You want an author of this or not? It's a Yuval Noah Harari author who wrote this book. It's a very research-oriented book. It goes back to 4.5 billion years prior, right? And you have 3.8 billion years when the biology started becoming and how we grew from one cell to another cell. Some of the lessons which I learned from there was that actually we think we are very smarter than the people who were in the Stone Ages. No, we are a lot stupider than those people, right? No, we have a lot of specialists. I have 3 daughters who are physicians. They're all specialists. If I asked my dermatologist daughter, I said that, hey, I'm having a little headache there. She said, Dad, you need to call to your PCP. If you have a skin problem, tell me. I'll fix it. So we rely on that. In the ancient times, when the people were still, they would be doing everything themselves. One person will be everything, carpenter, this, ironsmith or whatever. And they will, from smelling the air, will tell you whether it's going to rain or it's going to be dry or it's going to freeze, right? Just from the smell of that. And the other thing which I learned is that how our biology, human biology changed, when we used to walk on 4s, the gestation for humans used to be almost like 2 years. And when we started walking on 2, the women's anatomy could not support 2 years of gestation. So it's slowly shrink down to whatever 9-10 months is, right? Because when they were walking, their hip shrinks, their everything shrunk there. So it goes into these kind of details, and I just enjoyed it. That's the number 1 book. I told you I'd talk too much, Trace. Then I have the notebook of Leonardo da Vinci. Basically, that guy, again, he was not very, it was recent, a few centuries back. He was a artist, if you look his pictures there in the book, I have the book here. What you see in the X-ray machine of the CTI scans, the muscle sculptures and everything else going in there is already there in those his designs. He designed steam engines.
That always fascinated me.
Fascinating, right? His philosophy. One man, one man was doing, the art, anatomy, physical sciences, designs, philosophy, and history. And the third book I read is the history of Sikhs. I read a lot of books, but these are the three books I just wanted to mention because even though I'm a Sikh, S-I-K-H, born as a practicing Sikh there, but I did not really know much about the history because I was so busy in chemical engineering and chemistry and so on and so forth. I learned a lot of things, that why they were successful, why they were, all to the point of extermination, right, by the different religions and all the religions wars and so on and so forth, and how it survived, and why the Sikhs are, at one point, Sikhs, if you look 30 years back, India's 2%, less than 2% is the population, but they had 19% of the economy, GDP was controlled by 19%. And that came from, now I understand where that was coming from, for survival. In a large, where the 80-90% are in a, like today, I don't want to go into political, but like today's Jews are feeling the same pinch like that, right? Or some Christian denominations, they're feeling that they're being accepted. So this was, again, a survival. And the survival makes the fittest people, when you have to do the survival.
So my next question to you, surely Hollywood is going to find out about all the things that you've done in your life. They're going to make a movie about your life. Who do you want playing Dr. Jasbir Gill?
That's a tough one, Trace. When I look at myself, anybody is handsome or active as I am. So I have to play myself. But
got to do it.
If there is, the old Ronald Reagan would have played for me very well, because I crack a lot of jokes and I have a very, very serene appearance, as well as, nothing bothers me in this world, right? Because I just say that, okay, I did my best. And even to my employers, I used to tell them, hey, I did my best. If you don't like it, find somebody if you can, right? So that way, I think I had that notion. But so I don't watch a lot of movies or things like that. So I don't really know. But I think I will be a very good actor if you want to make a movie about me.
If you could talk to anybody throughout history, who would it be with and why?
Guess what? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was really in this country. I got my citizenship in 1980. And his demeanor, his way of working, his, putting things in perspective. If you look at his conversations, which was a revolution, he brought a revolution. When he said his terms, but he said, Gurbi, break that wall, tear that wall, right? And guess what? That was the fall of Russia.
All right. Well, hey, this has been fascinating, Dr. Gill. I know we didn't talk about what we originally set out to talk about, but that's okay. We'll have you back. We'll talk about that paper, maybe some of your other dozen papers. But I just want to thank you for sitting down with me and having a great conversation.
And I think this is really a good subject. Picked up the very right topic, because this is very near and dear to me. And this originated, as I put in the introduction of that paper, that in couple of the sessions the year before there, I had to really stand up there when there was a conversation going on. I asked the chairman, I said that, hey, if you have 20 minutes for me, I can wrap it up here right now. And then the IWC, but those executive members who are there, he asked me, he said that, Jasbir, you can wrap it up in 5 minutes, but I will request you to write a paper on this thing. So this was a asked for paper that time.
That's how some of those things happen, and you were the right man to do it. And we're going to have you back to talk about it. But thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, once again, thank you, Dr. Gill. Such a neat conversation. We actually stayed online after we finished the recording of this episode. Dr. Gill had just so much information about things that have been developed in this industry. So just an amazing resource. We're definitely going to have him back. And I had no idea that J factors came from Dr. Gill, and they actually stood for his first name, Jasbir. So I'm learning along with you. That's just cool. That's actually a tool that my father taught me way long time ago, because he was brought up in that CalGuard industry. That was the first place he started doing water treatment before he moved to another company. And history was made because then I joined my dad with that other company, and eventually scaling up H2O came out of that. So who knew that when my dad was having me do drop tests on the kitchen table when I was in middle school, that he was producing the seeds for the Scaling Up H2O podcast? You know, I kind of joke with that, but you really never know what you are doing to help the person you are helping and what that's going to create. So just think about that. We have a very chaotic job. We have a very stressful job. I also think we have the best job in the world, but sometimes we get busy in the day-to-day and we don't take time to, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, to network with other people, to definitely have some social outlets with people that we know within this industry, people that we can talk with that just truly understand what our day-to-day is like, so we can tell them about it and they can get it and they can give us advice. And when we take time to do things like that, you don't know where that's going to lead for you and for them. So it is my sincere hope that you are taking advantage of that, because Nation, this is a tough job, but it's also the best job. And the reason it is the best job is because of the people that are in this industry. So by all means, you want to make sure that you know all of the people that you can in this industry. Now, Dr. Gill shared with us that he's published over 150 papers. He has over 70 patents. So we're going to put some of the papers that he mentioned on our show notes page. So as always, don't worry about taking notes during an episode or what did that guest say? How do I find that? We are always going to have that information for you on our show notes page. And by accessing our show notes page is how you can really bring this episode and every episode to life to make it a true learning experience. We'll have all the documentation that the guest mentioned. We'll have all of the resources, anything that was mentioned during the interview. We've got that very nice and listed out for you. So when you are now safe wherever you can access without driving, because you're at home in front of your computer or wherever you are, you can now safely go and access all that information and enhance your learning. Nation, thank you for listening to this podcast. I enjoy bringing these podcasts to you each and every week. And as always, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next week. Until then, have a great week, folks. Make sure you reach out to somebody. Ready to boost your water treatment expertise? Our Certified Water Technologist Prep course is designed to give you the confidence and skills you need to sign up for the Certified Water Technologist examination. Test your knowledge with our 100-question practice exam and learn what you need to succeed. Go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep to get started today.